Hi, good morning, speakers. How are you?
Good
Good
morning.
morning.
Hey,
How
Oliver,
are you?
Arijit, Dr. Justin, and Farah. Good to see you again.
Morning, everyone.
Good morning, good evening to Dr. Justin, DJ.
How you doing?
Hope you've been feeling better, Dr. Justin.
I am feeling a whole lot better. I was feeling like death, literally.
Wow, you look perfectly well now. I can see.
Yeah, it was ugly last week. I'll tell you that much.
Okay.
Ugly.
Missed your presence, missed your laughter, and missed your energy. But now you're back. We don't miss you anymore. We welcome
Yes.
you. Right.
Back in full effect.
And we shall start very soon, everyone. Oliver, you good with your audio? Arijit and Farah?
Yes,
Yeah,
I think you can hear me.
All loud and clear. All right. Let's start the session proper while the others are streaming in. Over to you, Miza.
Thank you, Professor. Good day,
You want me to
everyone.
start it off, or are we waiting for somebody?
Hello. Okay, let's begin. Good day, everyone, and welcome to the final episode of the webinar series entitled "The Education in AI: A Non-Conventional Approach to Maximize Learning Outcome." My name is Miza, and I am your host for today. On this day, for this special webinar, we also are honored to have a very special guest, Dr. Justin Golston, who will be beginning the webinar with a keynote presentation. This will then be followed by a panel discussion moderated by Professor M. Nazri, joined by Mr. Oliver Tian, Ms. Wan Farah Ahmad, and Mr. Arajit Bhattacharya. Before we begin the session, let me share some keynotes about who the speakers are. First, the keynote presentation will be begun by Dr. Justin Golston, Professor, Project and Supply Chain Management, Penn State University. Dr. Justin Golston is Professor of Project and Supply Chain Management at Penn State University, where his research is focused on blending the practices of supply chain management, emerging technologies such as blockchain and artificial intelligence, and sustainability to create positive global change. Dr. Justin is also the co-founder of sidtech, a blockchain startup that is looking to reinvent higher education with the Web3 way that will enable students from around the world to collaborate and build solutions centered around blockchain, artificial intelligence, and the Internet of Things. Outside of being a 5-time TEDx speaker where he discussed blockchain and artificial intelligence, Dr. Justin has over 20 years of experience consulting with organizations worldwide on enterprise-wide digital transformation initiatives. The keynote presentation will then be followed by a panel discussion. The panelists includes Mr. Arajit Bhattacharya, founder and CEO of Virtual Infocom, founder and chairman, World Leaders Summit, a serial entrepreneur, an angel investor, and a public speaker since 2008, a business matchmaking expert, a government advisor, artist, author, community builder, and more. He has over 22 years of experience helping startups, entrepreneurs, and government across the world solve problems using entrepreneurship, technology, and innovation. RG is an international public speaker and invited as keynote speaker, panelist, and jury member at multiple global events every month, which includes new technology development, future of business, startup events, angel investment forums, etc. He is awarded top-rated global business leader, celebrated speaker, top influencer, blockchain specialist, and VR specialist, and a thought leader. He will also be joined by panelist Mr. Oliver Tian, honorary advisor, Asia Pacific Assistive Robotics Association, APARA, and vice chairman of the International Alliance of Robotics Association, IARA. Mr. Oliver Tian is also director and founder of Oliver Tian Associates expert and advisor for AI for Good Asia, and immediate past president of Singapore Industrial Automation Association. He was also the former member of Alumni Advisory Board of the President of NUS. And finally, the roses among Zikon, Ms. Wan Farah Ahmed, co-founder and director and CIO of Kanzi Ventures Management. Wan Farah is a venture capital entrepreneur who focuses on Sharia-compliant investments and developing startup companies. She has 17 years experiences, of which 10 years in VC and 7 years in entrepreneurship. She has screened over 2,000 companies from diverse sectors and stages. She has acquired the end-to-end experience of venture capital value chain from working with general partner, fund management, limited partner level fund of funds to being an entrepreneur herself. She has monitored 11 fund companies with AUM of RM 350 million and helped secure more than RM 50 million worth of investment for 2 portfolio companies. This panel session will also be moderated by Adjunct Professor M. Nazri Muhammad, founder and president of MyFinly Group, chairman, Center of Excellence in AI Innovation Global. Professor Nazri is also ranked #1 global thought leader in digital transformation, artificial intelligence, and predictive analytics by Thinker 360 Thought Leader. He was awarded the Asia Pacific Young Business Leader Award, AI Innovation, Top 30 Global Attractive Companies, and Top 25 Hottest FinTech in Asia Pacific, and IFN's Global Winner for Best Data Analytics Platform 2019. Professor Nazri is also presently the Honorary Consul for the Republic of Cabo Verde, West Africa, and recently appointed and conferred with the title of Adjunct Professor AI Practice by Summer University effective June 2020. Now, without further ado, I would like to invite Dr. Justin Goldston to begin the presentation. Dr. Justin?
Thank you for that. I'm going to bring up my screen as within the last presentation. Just have one slide. I like to keep it short and sweet, but the one slide I always pull is a powerful one. And this slide was created by Cognilytica. And in a previous study, it has been found that the use of AI within the education industry is going to grow 47.5% throughout 2021. Now, I believe that the pandemic has accelerated the adoption of AI. And as I said in the first session, whenever I say AI, I want to say that it is indeed augmented intelligence. It assists us in decision making. It assists us from an education perspective. It assists us in learning. I also believe that AI is going to assist us in democratizing education. That's my biggest goal. That's my life's. The data showed you showed. All right, so is it showed in the US or worldwide? So this is primarily within the US. So it's my life's mission to democratize artificial intelligence. AI. It is my life's mission to democratize blockchain. It's my life's mission to democratize. Most importantly, it's my mission to democratize education. Right. So we're going to see an increase in adoption of AI within higher education, and within the study by Cognilytica, they talked about 6 different use cases. One of those use cases is smart content. And when we talk about smart content, we can have these AI tools to scan the number of peer-reviewed journal articles, to scan textbooks, to provide a summary of the consensus of a particular topic, right? So there's one tool. First and foremost, I'm an advisor for this organization called Ziotag, Ziotag, and what they're doing is they're actually using AI as a tool to essentially break down videos, to break down lectures, to break down YouTube videos. so that students can understand different concepts easier, right? Again, augmented intelligence. You still have to read. I'm an educator. I tell students, you still have to read, but these tools assist you in better understanding the content that we're discussing, right? So another use case of AI within education is interactive tutoring. So I feel that AI can be used as a tool to collect data from a student by student perspective. You can also look at it. You can look at it from a hierarchical perspective. So I can look at it from a classroom, from a class perspective, from a major perspective. Let's say a major perspective, right? And we can look at all of the areas that people in a particular major struggle with or they need additional assistance with, right? Then we break that down to a classroom perspective and break down what areas where people need more assistance from a tutoring perspective. Then you can break it down to a student perspective to see how they have been progressing throughout a program, throughout a class, to better understand how to assist that student from a tutoring perspective. Now, you can also leverage AI to say, okay, based on the response, then you could have a interactive tutoring session to say, okay, yes, you partially got this correct. Now you can actually now here's some additional information for you to better understand that particular topic, right? So that's what we refer to when we're talking about interactive real-time tutoring, where it's going to be that continuous feedback loop, if you will. Another process that I'm excited about is that it can speed up administrative tasks, so grading. I'm in the blockchain space. I teach blockchain, I teach artificial intelligence, I teach supply chain, where we don't really have that many papers, right? But if we frame it like a English, like a paper intensive discipline like English, where those professors, those teachers are just reading papers. But we could actually load up these papers, these graded papers, right? Load it up in this AI tool, this ML tool. So that tool, and once again, AI and ML are nothing but tools. All right. If you hear me talk, you're going to continually hear me say that. They're nothing but tools, right? So you upload those tools, and the tool will learn from that, and now you can essentially automate the grading process, right? So now it's just a review, and that's going to expedite that grading from a professor standpoint. So for example, I have 50 students in my supply chain class, but in an undergraduate intro to biology class at Penn State, there's 700 students in that class. So if you have a paper, that could take somebody weeks. They have TAs, but even with TAs, it takes 2 weeks to grade a paper, right? So if you have a tool like AI for a 700 student class, that is a game changer, absolute game changer. Okay. Also, in another use case, you have adaptive learning environments. Now, pre-AI, we already have these adaptive learning environments where based on if a student answered a previous question correctly or incorrectly, those exams, those quizzes will become more difficult, or they'll become easier. But now, instead of pre-creating those exams, then based on the topic, AI could actually generate questions with real-time events, real-time scenarios, real-time case studies to provide a real-time adaptive learning environment. With me, this is very important in my particular discipline, like in AI, in blockchain. My argument is that, researchers in blockchain, they're not in a space in blockchain like I am. I literally just wrote the first hybrid finance peer reviewed journal article. There's not a hybrid finance peer reviewed journal article out there because hybrid finance was just introduced by Kala and Current 2 months ago, right? So the AI tool, the ML tool, can actually scan the net for these real-time developments in a particular discipline, and they can create exams, they can create quizzes based on that. Or going back to the first use case, they can create smart content based on examples that just happened, right? So for example, I know I'm getting deep in blockchain, but these are real-time use cases. So the Solana blockchain just went down today. It just went down. In the blockchain space, that's unheard of. We've never heard of a blockchain going down. It happened today. So if I'm teaching my blockchain class, and I do a discussion on the stability, I do smart content on the stability of a blockchain. It can pull that story that just happened today and include it within my course content. So AI and ML can bring in real-time content that happened literally hours ago. Okay. Curriculum materials, again, going back to that real-time content. I'm always one to say that there's a lot of room for improvement within higher education because we essentially depend upon, peer-reviewed journal articles and textbooks. By the time those textbooks are written, they're already a year and a half old. That content's already a year and a half old. So again, in the discipline that I'm in, if I have a textbook on blockchain from a year and a half, they're talking about old news. Ethereum has already changed 3 times if a textbook is talking about Ethereum a year and a half ago. If I'm talking about, if I have a peer-reviewed journal article on Polkadot from 3 months ago that just got published, it was written 3 months ago. Polkadot has changed so much, that peer-reviewed journal article is no good, it's obsolete. It's already changed so much. Are actually going to be very, 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 very important for particular industries because the space changes so quickly. So the most important use case, in my opinion, is how we can identify learning gaps in the classroom. So another thing that's going to be important that we currently do within higher education is called universal design for learning, where we will provide the same content in the written form, same content in the audio form, same content in the video form, right? Because people learn differently, right? So we could actually pull that information and we could actually provide suggestions on the best learning approach for a particular student. Now we could also look at exams. We could also look at homework assignments. We could also look at quizzes to identify gaps for each individual student. We have enough data. We have data from thousands of students from around the world. So, but you could say, okay, it's apples and oranges, right? And then the one thing that gets me is that they'll put within the US, they put the learning of Hispanics in a bucket. They put the learning of Caucasians in a bucket. They put the learning of African Americans in a bucket. They really have no definitive data to say, why are you putting these people in a bucket? It's just the culture, it's the history, it's the mindset. Now we have the data to democratize education and make education right. So going back to these AI tools, we need to use education for good. Going back to my first discussion, I'm writing a book called AI for Good. We need to democratize education. We need to democratize blockchain. We need to democratize AI. When we democratize AI, when we democratize education, we make education available for everyone, we change the world. So the thing is, think about the things that the use cases that are important to you. And one thing that I say is, we need to stop talking about these things and start developing these things. All right. So one thing I always do is I'll walk the talk. And with so again, I'm a co-founder of sidtech. And one thing that we do, our slogan is we're reinventing higher education the Web3 way. So we are bringing together students from around the world to develop blockchain solutions, to integrate blockchain with artificial intelligence. Now, I did bring up, this is not a pitch deck. I am not trying to sell anything. I'm just trying to demonstrate I'm putting my money where my mouth is. So if you look at our token distribution, we're distributing 15% of our tokens to higher education and the students. So the thing is, if we are incentivizing, if we are empowering the future, these students are going to learn. Yes, some people don't like an incentivization type structure, but the thing is, that's the reality. If you incentivize people to learn, if you pay people to learn, they're going to learn. That's our mindset. So we're leveraging these tools. We're leveraging AI, leveraging blockchain, and we're paying students to learn. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Justin, for your insightful and succinct sharing, especially on the use cases of AI when it comes to teaching and learning in the schools, in the higher education schools, right? So right now, in order to encourage more productive discussion with everyone in the panelists, which I truly respect, because they are both practitioners and educators at the same time in various capacity. So we will have now a certain whiteboard session where three tracks of discussion shall be pursued. Okay, and we have the next 45 minutes and an hour to go through that. Pretty much, decent time for us to convey and exchange ideas and views on these three areas, whilst waiting for questions from the floor. And members of the audience, you can float your questions in the Q&A chat box as we go along. Okay, so right now I would like to invite Oliver perhaps to comment about what Dr. Justin has said, and in the context of the use cases and how currently how educators right now could consider incorporating AI in teaching, in their teaching process and the teaching procedures. At the same time, perhaps provide more perspective of the kind of exposures that educators these days need to have, the kind of priorities, the kind of obstacles that you think they are experiencing right now when it comes to adopting AI to teach their students. So perhaps you can start off with that, Oliver.
Sure, thanks, Nasri, and it's a pleasure to be in the panel to discuss a very important topic in my view. I reckon education is probably the key to our next generation. If society were to progress, we need to start with education. There was a quote that was given once to me: if we want to know what is the future to look like, never ask the technologists, never ask the teachers, but ask the kindergarten kids. They will tell you what they want the world to be. And we need to start with that, because if we do not educate the young to see the future, by the time they grow up, they will see the world we want them to see, not their own future. Hence, AI is very important. And I totally agree with Dr. Justin in his views on the adoption of AI. But the adoption of AI in the education system is not as easy as what we think it to be. And the reason is very simple. A lot of the adults who are teachers are ingrained with some method of education. And we believe that we have been successful because we've gone through that pattern, that mode of education. And to change that traditional method of teaching takes a toll on them. There are many ideas that have been suggested around the world to institute a change in the education model. And like what Dr. Justin said, to democratize AI, to democratize education. But it's not as easy as it is. I've been involved in a number of task force in Singapore's MOE discussion around what would be the best way to do so. It involved a massive change to the entire system, especially for mainstream education. It is probably easier to look at the private systems and to see how we can institutionalize a change in education models by introducing AI. Dr. Justin shared with you some statistics around what's happening in the US. I've been doing some research on my own to see what's happening in Asia. I would be happy to share that actually in China, just last year, they have introduced AI curriculum in the kindergarten classes. They've started to print AI textbooks for kindergarten kids to understand the basics of what AI is. At least they start to appreciate the whole concept of AI from young. Just 2 years ago, the Chinese government has approved 35 majors in, well, let me rephrase it. They have just approved AI majors in 35 universities in China. Let's look at that effort of how a country is actually trying to do so. And the same method goes across, the same system goes across the region. Korea is doing the same, Taiwan is doing the same, Singapore has our own national AI agenda. We know there's a huge need for us to introduce AI to the young. The question is going to be how. The question is how receptive will the teachers be to change the current method, to change what they know, to change what they are comfortable with, and being educators for decades, now look at a different way of teaching kids. I like Dr. Justin's explanation and that chart where we talk about smart contents, we talk about interactive tutoring. I fully subscribe to that list of 6 trusts offered by the survey. In fact, I'm a firm believer that students at the right point in time should be able to co-author their learning journey with their mentors. Right? If they have sufficient background, right, they should be able to express, that is my dream, that's what I want to be, how do I get there? And we should not allow the teacher to tell the kid, that's not in the syllabus, so don't ask any questions about it. And that's going to inhibit the child's potential. In the next generation of education, it's so important that we do allow the child to see their own future, to build their own dreams, and to be able to build up their dream and know what they want to go after. And in fact, the knowledge system has already been democratized. It's so easy to get knowledge today on your smartphone. What we need to teach a kid is how to validate that knowledge to make sure it is not fake news. Right? But the bottom line of it all, we must train the teachers first in this new model. Let me pause there and pass it back to you, Nasri. Perhaps let other panelists share their views as well.
Very well said, Oliver. Arijit, what do you think about the comments made by Dr. Justin and Oliver on this one?
Yeah, I completely agree. So for those who don't know probably my detailed background, we started as a education institute back in '98. And I personally trained probably more than 6,000 students and created a syllabus here in India for one of the university. And till date, I teach in a college, of course, as a industry expert and as a HOD of a department called Game Development, VR and AI. So whenever we are talking about giving education to the students, I'll shift a little bit differently. Rather than talking only about AI, I'll talk about the student's perspective. When students usually communicate with us, they look at us that, okay, fine, somebody is coming from the industry and he or she will give a lot of input from the industry perspective. There is a specific backdraw, I would say. The syllabus structure of present universities that doesn't allow the exact industry connect with the education system. And whenever we try to teach that, there is a specific agenda that we need to finish 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on a specific roadmap. So what we did, actually personally I did, I finished off the entire syllabus within probably 3 months of time, and the next 2 to 2.5 months, I teach completely on a different perspective, which is real-time execution from the industry perspective. When we talk about AI, implementing AI-based system inside the syllabus, of course, there are tools which can actually help the education system to enhance. But believe me or not, there are systems that is coming up. I can see that from a very different industry perspective, that there will be AI-based system which will actually enable any student to learn on their own and probably give back on the same time. I know a group of young, energetic kids who are probably less than 16 years old, who started their own teaching system utilizing all those tools. What they're doing, they're actually taking input from their teachers, their mentors, from industries, from, of course, internet, created their own database, pulling those data up, and then created very simple, easy to understandable tools for next generation to understand and learn what's happening. These less than 16-year-old kids are asking a very different kind of level of people. They are asking people who are aged more than 60, who have a keenness of understanding new technology. They're asking them, okay, we are here to teach. We have very limited number of money to ask. Rather, it's literally kind of free. You come and we will be teaching you. Now, what's happening? When they're using such kind of tools, elderly people, they are happy because they can connect with kids and they can learn at the same time. They can spend time. They can actually become happy. So there is a big, I think, issue that we need to understand. In today's generation kids, I rightly said by Oliver, today's generation kids, they really want to give back to the world. And they are completely into a complete different dimension, and probably from us. We are probably aged about a mid-age kind of people. But when we look at those kind of kids, they are saying that, okay, fine, somebody needs to learn, I'll be teaching it for free. And to be honest, that's happening. And for that purpose, if they're using such kind of tool, which gives them empowerment, I think we as an industry body, we should create such kind of tools which gives them more and more power to teach more and more people. I don't believe firmly that education have an age. If somebody aged about 80 saying that I want to learn something which is on blockchain, we shouldn't say, okay, grandpa, you are totally old and you are not entitled to learn a new technology. No, it's not like that. Education actually enables power. It enhances countries. It enhances creativity. It actually improvises the entire world. And I think we should go for it. Completely taking a note from Dr. Justin, we should stop talking about it and start executing it. Thank you so much.
Well said. Very powerful message there from the panelists so far. And Farah, over to you. Dr. Justin has spoken about, and the panelists along spoke about the use of AI tools, right, as a form of facilitation between learners and educators. Some common grounds would be managing contents, automated grading, right, personalized learning by understanding learning gaps and fit into it. So in the context of the first track of questions, from the teachers, educators' perspective, which Arajit keep mentioning, right? The teachers, and even Oliver, right? Spoken about the changing mindset or the tough mindset. It's not as easy as it seems. Do you agree that educators, lecturers, professors in schools these days, they need to be given more exposures to how AI is being adopted, and what sort of hurdles or what sort of obstacles they face, and what should be their priority when it comes to adopting the ideas and the practices that Arijit, Oliver, and Dr. Justin have been mentioning?
Yeah, thank you, Nazri, for that question, and thank you for having me here. I would like to qualify that I've never actually taught in any even the universities, but there were some cases, but I would just like to share. And going on what Arijit said, and also Dr. Justin said, we have to start doing and stop, just discussing things. But it's also good to, have brainstorm. There's a quote from the Red Indian. It is better to have less thunder in the mouth and more lightning in the hand. And I also go on that, like, in terms of teaching AI, enabling AI in education, educators need to be mindful of the differences in how do you say, the personalities of the kids and their learning styles. That means in terms of pedagogy, that is the method and practice of teaching. There's 5 types. There's constructivist, there's collaborative, there's integrative, there's inquiry-based learning, and there's reflective. Okay. So each child or each learner learns in a different style, and what we need to do is actually we need to engage them in a way that they can relate and understand what they're trying to solve at hand. And in this sense, AI can help to actually zoom in the problem, what the learner does not understand, they can actually key in, and then perhaps the AI can actually also provide some solutions to that those questions that they're having. In another sense, AI can also perhaps recognize their facial recognition. The face of that they do not understand when they arrive to a certain subject. I think AI can help that, when they can actually address what is the thing that is bothering you, and how can we actually solve it. Okay, so in that sense, we can also see that AI can help in the sense of identifying the personalities of the learners, whether they are INTJs, ISTPs, ENTJs, according to the Brick-Myers personalities. And also in terms of exposures, now, because there's too many hours spent in a sedentary lifestyle, actually the learning time is actually good when you have some breaks in between, so that you actually can get the how do you say, the thought process going, and it's like a new burst of energy, so it's actually good to have some intermittent breaks when you actually apply these learning methodologies, and not just sit in one sitting for 6 hours straight. Is not very conducive for the learners. So I think that's all for now for me. Yeah, thanks.
Very well said, Farah. And do you think that there's a lot of room for improvement for Malaysian schools? And this will also be deflected to Oliver in Singapore schools, and Arjit in Indian schools, schools in India, as well as Dr. Justin in American schools. So we have quite a diverse nationalities of speakers. We would love to know your perspective very quickly around the table before we move on to the Q&A offered by one member of the audience. So Farah, starting with you, do you think there's room for improvement in the way teachers are teaching their people, and how far away are they from reaching the your kind of expectations, your kind of standards, and the kind of IR 4.0 level that we hope to prepare them for? Then I will, pass the questions back to the rest of the panel very quickly. Over to you, Farah.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of room for improvement, actually, because we were also looking at the way that Finland actually carrying out their education system. It actually allows for more flexibility and enhances, optimizes the capabilities of the learners. So there's also that the ones that I came across in a very short while, Entaleki AI powered a personal tutor, and there's also Carnegie Learning from the tidadvocate.org. So there are many ways, definitely, Nazri, that we actually look forward to improvise our education system, and I think MyFinB can play a really great role in this.
Thank you, Oliver. Singapore schools, Singapore universities, Singapore tertiary institutions, are they teaching it right? Are they doing right, or are they doing the right things? Your thoughts on this, Oliver?
Sure. So I believe there are efforts in the Singapore education system that's trying to explore and move into the new era of education. My personal feel is not good enough. It's not fast enough. I think the young certainly developing themselves a lot faster than what the system can provide for. The advice I normally give to educators is do not stop the child from exploring their own potential. Don't limit them to what they should know. Allow them to explore their minds and build what is possible. I want to draw the discussion into three areas, Nasri.
Sure.
First of all, there is a question in the chat that says, how can we help the low resource countries and the developing countries in terms of providing laptops and access to internets? And that's a very important question, because to ensure that we have sufficient education opportunities across, we need to allow them access. And what I want to highlight is we actually have this tool, we actually have this platform available today. In the good old days when the textbooks were expensive, and many of us as students who could not afford to buy the textbook, where do you go? You go to the library. You go to the reference section and you get access to the book, you share that book, and you have pockets of time that you can use the book to do your research and learn new things, right? But today the library is not used in the best way that grow together with the education technology and the technology that can enable them to continue to bring up the best in their service line. So when we have low resource countries, the library can provide the access to the internet. The library can provide the access to machines and tools which allow the kids to have equal opportunities of learning. I would put it across here to library owners and library directors to think through this, right? They have a part to play in the education system too. They have to also institutionalize the AI message in their system and their structure. So that's one point. The second point to what Farah mentioned is, I think we need to slowly and surely move towards a multi-modal way of understanding the learning system. What do I mean by multi-modal? Today, a lot of the way we structure the learning process is through very textual transmission. We write essays, right? We're starting to move into a space where we talk about it, we present it. Sometimes we even get into a workshop and we produce a product. That is very important because we need to be able to use multi-modal way of delivering the content as well as assessing the content. And that holistic way of educating the young is so very important. There are tools today out there where you can assess the message that the child is saying. So when a teacher asks, do you understand? And the child says, yes. So do you take the textual content and say, yes, the child understands? Or do you hear the tone and the mood and say, hey, hold on, you need more help, right? So today, if we base our assessment and our communication with the child based on textual content, it is not sufficient. And tools today can analyze that audio, that frequency, and determine if there is any emotion that's been expressed together with it. The third point I wanted to share, which is slowly being adopted here in the Singapore schools, and there are a couple of pilots taking place. There are a couple of very young teachers who are taking their bold steps to convince the principals to adopt, is visible learning. The visible learning is a very important concept that has been started quite a few years now. The National Institute of Education in Singapore is trying to encourage the young teachers to adopt visible learning. There has been a number of webinars where we invite experts from around the world to talk about that concept and to really understand if the child has really learned the concept well. So one parting message I leave here before I pass on to the other panelists is, do not ask the child for an answer, because he just needs to memorize the pattern match, the words in the answer to the question. Ask the child to ask questions about the question, because in that way, the child will definitely understand better what he knows and will be curious to find out more. And that structure, that process itself, it will encourage the child to fully appreciate the content that he is in taking in, and more importantly, for the teacher to assess that the child has really learned a lot more. Ask the child to ask questions, not to give simple answers. Back to you, Nasri.
Thank you, Oliver. Thanks for sharing the Singapore experience in education. Arijit, your observation of Indian schools when it comes to teaching and learning AI, what sort of progress has been made there, and what sort of improvements that can be made further from India perspective?
Okay, because you're asking specific to the AI, but let me give you probably, I'll take 1 minute to give you the perspective of Indian education system.
Sure.
When we talk about India, it's actually a very big country. Each and every state is considered as a different country with respect to number of people and of course, number of cultures that we have. So when we talk about India, we are actually talking about 56, to be very precise, different cultures from various different part of India. And till date, to be very honest, we are talking about AI, but till date in India, there are places, there are villages where there is no internet, there is less access to electricity. So when you talk about Indian education system, we need to consider all these situations. And people from India, they are coming from those villages, trying to get some higher education. They usually come to the metro cities, try to learn from the local universities or colleges or probably the higher schools for higher study. They have a complete different understanding of our own education system. I will go with Oliver. We, at least in India till date, didn't started teaching the kids that, okay, fine, you're entitled to ask question. Rather, it's opposite. Teachers, they are actually giving notes. They are just following the so-called usual rule, and students are not entitled to ask too many questions. And I have been watching this. I have been listening and hearing a lot of parents who usually come and they usually express their issues in front of lot many people. So maybe we need to look back to ourselves as an educator, as a teacher, to give a flexibility to a kid so that they can ask questions, they can fly, they can think, and they can go beyond what is there in the syllabus. Coming back to our AI system integration, well, yes, if we look at Indian metro city based universities, mainly probably the eastern part of India, as you know, I'm from eastern part of India. To be very honest, the entire intellectual property of entire India actually started from the eastern part, if you look at the history or the present status. So we, at least in the eastern part, which is nearby Bangladesh, we used to be one country once upon a time. We started giving a complete new kind of education. We are asking kids, okay, fine, if you are probably learning something, you go for real-time implementation, real-time execution. You talk to the people in the market and then try to implement that. Yes, talking about implementation of AI-based tools, there is a high possibility probably we can do it in eastern part of India or probably southern part of India. These places are more advanced. We have connectivity, we have probably good electricity and good network. We are talking about 5G nowadays, but I will go back to the good old places wherein we are more connected with nature, but we have limited resources. So how about them? Can't they have access to the latest generation technology? Can't they have access to good education? Can we create some kind of system wherein they are entitled and they are, getting an option to go for higher education? Maybe we can go back to our startup pool. We have multiple number of startups who can probably come and join the movement. Maybe my FinB group and us, all of us, create an agenda regarding the same. We can probably empower others to give education and create a community of such kind of people, go back to the grassroots and basics and give them that kind of teaching. I'm sorry being a little bit of emotional because I actually traveled extensively to these villages and I saw the situation. I saw how people don't get education, how people don't get food, how people don't get electricity. I'm really sorry about this statement, but this is not really good situation, at least in 2021, after 75 years of independence in India. It's not good.
Well, Arujit, thanks for your frank and candid sharing of the opportunities, the developments, the evolution of education in India. We can feel your passion, yeah, and your sense of responsibility in trying to upgrade and uplift the learners community back in India. I'm sure with collaboration and partnerships with the esteemed panelists here and beyond this group, we can find ways to improve them in leaps and bounds or even in baby steps. Yeah. Dr. Justin, it's been a while since we got back to you, but you have been actively answering questions in the panel box or the chat box, which is much appreciated. But back to you, what has been the education system like for US and when it comes to the education in AI? I know you've spoken about blockchain, you've spoken about how schools, higher education schools are beginning to adopt such AI technologies, but bring it down lower to the schools like the ones that Oliver mentioned for China, right? As early as kindergarten. Can you believe it? As early as kindergarten. Do you see US losing out to China in the world of AI simply because they train people or kids much younger than presumably Americans train their students? What are your thoughts on that? Don't mean to be
Yeah.
political about it, but I just wanted to know the inter-country comparison and what it means for the future of America when it comes to education in AI. Over to you.
Yeah. So first, before I get started, Arajit, much respect in your passion, because I'm all about that. We need to hook up. We need to hook up and change the world, my friend. But I had a note on what Oliver said, 'cause I was gonna talk about that, because whenever he said AI in kindergarten, that's absolutely amazing. And my daughter is 1 years old. And she has blockchain for babies, AI for babies, machine learning for babies, and things
Okay.
like that. But the U.S. is not going to do what China does. And my biggest fear is China's going to take over. China's going to take over. We're seeing it with China entering into parts of Africa. With land, we're seeing China enter into the Caribbean over here in the States. We see China working with the Taliban, for precious minerals and things like that. So it's like the U.S. has turned a blind eye from a global perspective. The U.S. has turned a blind eye from an education perspective, right? I would say that you know there's a whole I say time and time again, there's a whole lot of room for improvement. And within the US, there have been continuous tax cuts for higher education, right? In order to get an education, you have to pay extra. You're paying taxes for education, but then you have to pay extra money to send your kid to a decent private school to get the real education they need, right? So we do have specialized schools for technology where you can send your child to a school, a bilingual school, to learn Mandarin and English and Spanish, so trilingual schools. You can send your kid to technology schools, starting with kindergarten, but those things are super expensive. So you're paying taxes for education. Now you have to pay extra money to get an education everyone's supposed to get. That's ridiculous, right? So and the thing is, going back to what RG said, those people in lower economies, they're not going to be able to afford that. The rich are going to continue to get richer because the rich are going to be sending their kids to these technology schools. They're going to stay ahead. They're going to stay ahead. And the thing is, that's why I'm passionate about democratizing education. That's why I'm about. So we have these open online schools online, right? MIT is giving away free education on YouTube. People aren't taking advantage of it. So that's why I say we have to incentivize people to learn, because us giving away education is not working. They're still not learning. But if we incentivize people, they'll learn. Perfect example. So if you've heard of Axie Infinity, it's a play to earn game on a blockchain, right? A number of people in the Philippines. I have a number of people in the Philippines right now playing a game for me. I'm sending over enough money for them to play a game for me. They're making more money playing a game for me than what they make in a month working a regular job. If you incentivize people, they will do things. You have 50-year-old, 60-year-old people playing a game to put food on the table. So if you incentivize people to learn, they're going to learn. Sorry, so I get on my soapbox as well, RG. My fault. But the thing is, we have to make a difference. And in terms of education, you know, I'm tough on my students. I'm tough on my students. I say that in the very first day of class. I say I love you all. I'm gonna be tough on you all. I say I'll work. I say I'm deep in the industry. I have founders of organizations. I have hiring managers. I have recruiters. I say, tell me what you need for undergraduate students and graduate students. They said they have the knowledge. The thing that's missing are the soft skills. They can't communicate all this knowledge they have with their peers. They can't collaborate with all the stuff they have with their peers. They think that if they keep all this stuff to themselves, they're going to benefit. If you keep everything to yourself, you don't provide any value to me. If you collaborate, if you provide knowledge sharing, if you build up those soft skills, those competencies, you make a difference. You make a difference in the world. And the same thing with internships. So I sent 6 students to an AI startup. I told the founder of the AI startup, I say, be tough on these students. They're like, what? I say, be tough on these students because I want them to make mistakes here in this internship so they don't make them out there in a full-time job. Right? So the thing is, like I said, I'm tough on students, and within higher education, universities are focused on revenue. It's a business over here right now. It's a business over here right now. And they're pushing students through that don't deserve to be going through. I'll be real with you. They don't deserve to go through. I've left about 2 institutions because they're pushing back to me when the students don't do work and I fail them. I say, oh, can you do it? No. They're not going to be doing extra credit, give me more work. They had 15 weeks to get the work done. No. I said, don't let me go to the Department of Higher Education. You don't want that heat. So the thing is, by pushing students through, you're setting students up for failure. What's it solving pushing students through for a piece of paper? They still have to demonstrate their knowledge in the interview. And you know what? It starts at the kindergarten level. To set that stage at the kindergarten level, so they know what success looks like and what hard work looks like. I'll be 1000% real with you right now. The students that work for me in my projects, they don't come from the US. They come from Singapore, they come from China, they come from India because they know what hard work is. So the thing is, y'all are doing it right. But the thing is, the education system is broken. Like I said, I'm not for everybody from a higher education perspective. I love all my students and I'm tough on them because I don't want to set them up for failure once they graduate from them programs. But once again, last thing I'm going to say is it all starts at that lowest level. Thanks.
Wow, it reminds me of a Martin Luther Jr. speech. Very well said, very powerful there, Dr. Justin. Oliver, I need to ask you a question. Okay, when it comes to motivating and incentivizing universities and schools, right? when it comes to for schools and universities to motivate their educators and learners, as what DJ was talking about, right? He related to how it could be linked to games and to put food to the table as one example. So what can we do from Singapore, from Asian perspective, right? At least to motivate, incentivize schools to encourage their educators and learners to be motivated, incentivized to adopt AI, to teach AI, to deploy AI, to make things better. Further to the mindset change you talked about just now, right? So could you comment that? Meanwhile, the other panelists, right, if I could trouble you to look at some of the Q&A and chats and bring over to the discussion table, that would be great. Yeah. So there are questions on digital wisdom and AI. There's a question on from Mike Dixon on how certain issues with little or no terrestrial infrastructure in the country. So he's hoping that Elon Musk and Starlink, satellite network could overcome these issues to provide internet access all over the world. So maybe Arijit, technology standpoint, what do you think of that aspect, or anyone else? Feel free to chip in. But I would like to reserve one particular question to Oliver, having been exposed to many educators' mindset, obstacles. What could schools do for educators and learners to be motivated and incentivized so that we can have more case studies and case experiences here on the two series? Thank you, Oliver.
Thanks, Nasri. Actually, in addition to answering the question, I'd like to take up a few questions that were raised in the chat as well.
Please
maybe
do.
I'll do that. Yeah, maybe I'll do that first because those are shorter, and then I'll talk about how we incentivize the schools.
Okay, please.
There is a question around visible learning, and someone asked for more details. So visible learning, if I understand it correct, was first created by John Hattie out of Australia, and he has actually written a book on this called Visible Learning. The whole idea of visible learning is to be able to allow the teachers to be better evaluators of what they are teaching, and to do so through the eyes of the students, and to help the students become their own teacher. In other words, the whole concept requires the student to demonstrate back to the teacher what they have learned, and to be visible, to see, rather than memorize what they have learned, right? So for the person in the audience who's asking the question, please feel free to Google visible learning. It's quite easy to get. There's a book written by Professor John Hattie, spelled as Hattie, and there's a lot of information available from his website as well. I had the privilege of listening to him talk earlier this year and was quite impressed with the whole idea. And in the Singapore schools, actually, that has been piloted in a number of schools at the primary school level, and it works quite well. We can see the 10 years old, the 12 years old demonstrating, telling the teacher what they have researched on, and they could articulate more than what the syllabus, what the textbook states, right? So that's one part. In terms of incentivizing the schools, I totally agree with Dr. Justin, right? Today's schools are becoming a lot more commercial, right? They take in students, they have got this alumni category where you come in and contribute X dollars to the school fund, and you get admitted into the school, and the child really don't do well. I've been in the education line both on the K-12 side as well as the corporate side for a while. I used to run an education institute, a private institute, for about 10 years. And I know of a child who literally failed 7 out of 8 subjects and gets admitted to an independent school because he's a top athlete, right? Because he runs well, he gets into the school, and guess what? He did miserably in the junior college. So that is definitely a clear example, right? Where we try to fit a square peg into a round hole. I would have actually put him into a sports school where he can continue to excel in his physical capability, than to try to push him on the academic side. I also believe that the industry can play a part to support the schools and incentivize the schools. The question is how they put the two pieces together. And it could be a joint program between the schools and the industry to advocate the additional learning for the child. So one of the things that I'm trying to do, and I've not been successful with the mainstream schools, right? But with the independent schools in Singapore, we're trying to introduce AI into the independent schools. We try to provide workshops to help the independent school students understand more about AI and the application of AI, and to bring industry experts to mentor and coach and guide them around projects that they can do, and to actually sponsor, eventually support the learnings that these children go through. It's a project we just started this year. The reception has been very good. A lot of the independent schools are stepping forward to participate in such a program. For now, we will start with just healthcare, right? Looking at how AI can assist in, for example, rehabilitation, in dementia care, right? And to get the children, the students to think beyond the textbook. What are the possible areas they can stretch their mind to create solutions to support in that area, right? So really, outside the textbook, what can be done? This is what AI is. This is what dementia care is. Put the two together, use your creative minds, build a possible solution. And hopefully, you know, in the final rounds, we can bring in some investors who can support them and take it further to a startup. So that would be key in doing so. In terms of the comments that I mentioned earlier about China introducing the AI textbooks at the kindergarten level, this, if you Google, right, AI textbooks for preschoolers, you'll find this news has been reported in the media. I have a newspaper clipping, in fact, and I'll be sharing that particular information in a presentation next month to talk about what this is possible. And why is that the case? Because around the Asian countries, more and more countries are starting to introduce it to the school level, right? It first started with Korea, which introduced robotics at high school. I visited 4 years ago an institution called the Seoul High School of Robotics, right? And this school, after grade 6, teaches the kid nothing but technology, right? Right from Internet of Things, circuits, to robotics, to AI, and build. And that's from, you know, grade 7 onwards, right? And then the Taiwanese followed suit, and the Chinese followed suit, and the last response is the Chinese trying to introduce that at the preschool level. I also agree, Dr. Justin, we've got to be careful, right? When you become too specialized too early, then you see the world in a very narrow space, right? In a very narrow space. There was another question in the chat that suggests that shouldn't we teach the students about climate change and other geographies as well? And I think this is key. For some of you have been following the Singapore curriculum, right? Last year, the National University of Singapore actually merged two of its faculties together, the Faculty of Science and the Faculty of Arts and Social Science, to become the College of Humanity and Sciences, where they put the arts and sciences together to allow students to have a more holistic training. So there are definitely efforts and attempts to do that. There are great initiatives in place, but again, I'll emphasize, in my view, not fast enough. The technology is moving so fast that we really got to catch up. Back to you, Nasri.
This is a very compelling statement, yeah. Technology is moving so fast that the schools are barely catching up. I think this is what we experienced when our conversations with chancellors, deans, heads of departments, and professors all over the world, in Asia and non-Asia, people are chasing up the process of technology transformation. Arijit and Farah, do you feel concerned about the pace of change and how education now goes to the kindergarten level? How about those people in the rural areas that who barely have the hardwares, and you know, and they're still in their mid-20s or probably working or even studying in high schools, and yet now certain countries, the disparity of the knowledge in technology gets wider and wider, even on a worldwide basis. What does this mean for you, Arjit and Farah?
Okay, I'll give you the answer in two different fold. First of all, with due respect to each and every participant and panelists, if you look at India, to be very, very honest and precise, it's a given name to us. It used to be Bharatvarsh, and I will call my country as Bharat and not as India. I'm so sorry about this statement, but that's how it is. We actually adopt a lot of things. When we look at our education system in old times, old days, if we look at languages like Sanskrit or Pali or Dravid, in those times we had science, which is probably till date, today's scientists couldn't explore yet. And when we talk about mathematics, we are talking about Vedic mathematics. If you look at Vedic mathematics, that structure and that total structure of that education was really, really amazing. So what I propose, without talking a lot, because I saw a question directly from Tanzania, and I can feel that what you're saying and proposing. Probably it sounds crazy, but if you give option to the kids who are today's present school kids, there are smart kids who would love to teach without any kind of boundaries and borders. Probably we can ask these people who are in probably class 9 standard or 10 standard or 8 standard to teach the younger generation of such places, and they would be happy to do it free of cost. Why? They don't understand the materialistic point of view. For at least from my perspective, we are more keen at this age group earning money, probably continuing the families, continuing our companies, continuing the so-called usual commercial stuff. But if we look at these kids, they are in the learning stage. They have been through a lot of knowledge. And when I'm talking about a lot of knowledge, I'm not at all kidding. They are learning so fast. They're grabbing things so fast from various parts of the world, whether it is South Korea, whether it is probably in some part of southern part of Africa. I'm very well connected with these kind of kids. We'll be happy to probably bring a couple of them as probably the future teacher, who will probably not get any kind of recognition from any university because they're really, really young, less than 18 years of age, but we'll be happy to teach these young generation for free, whether it is technology, whether it is non-technology, whether it is SDG, whether it is on environment, it doesn't matter. These kids are passionate enough to create more and more impact. So instead of probably we are talking about how to implement that as a syllabus or upgrading our present teacher, maybe we can look back to our next generation and give the baton to them to play around. Just my thoughts. Maybe it sounds crazy, but maybe that's one of the solutions that we can have.
Yes, this is a form of informal education, I suppose, away from the traditional form of learning, right?
Nazri, when we talk about industry implementation, when you talk about, say, for an example, you want to create an industry application utilizing maybe some engine, maybe some tool. These kids, they are well equipped with that. They have been creating application, uploading it into the app store, becoming those kind of things very, very really popular. People couldn't understand, okay, fine, this has been created by a 13-year-old kid. Oh my God, he did that or she did this. Okay. And these kids, they are talking about actual implementation. It's not about the traditional usual English teaching or maybe geography teaching. They're talking about more and more real life implementation. A kid from probably a southern part of India, she's about 9 years old, created a syllabus, or rather I would say created a system which can teach others how to learn English easily, created a data bank of all those question and answer, implemented a very simple AI tool and floated an application. People are loving it. I'm talking about such kind of implementation.
Okay, very good. Farah, your comments on what RG has said, does it wow you by now?
Definitely. I think Arijit is touching about geniuses. So there's two things. Okay. I think we should be cognizant of the different learning capabilities of every learner, every child, and recognize the genius of every child. And AI can help on this. So if you say that a fish cannot fly, and you say it's a bad fish because it cannot fly, so the fish will be living its life thinking it's a bad fish, unless if it's a swordfish or dolphin. So because that one can have a multi-function, right? So, and going back to your earlier questions, there's a different social economic status of people around the world, and this will enable them whether they can afford a tab or notebook for their children. And this has actually hampered some of the growth earlier on, when the adoption of going digital for online courses, especially for those who are not able to purchase all those equipments for the children, and also the getting used to the software, and also the educators having to adopt to different syllabus or online syllabus. It did wreak havoc. I heard from some of my friends who are teachers who are actually trying to implement this. So I think they have somewhat settled, but I think there's also a lot of room for improvement. So yeah, I think what is good to be cognizant of is the different learning capabilities of every person in the room. Thanks.
Well said, Farah. Well said. I think you brought a sense of a realistic check. While there are talents to recognize the geniuses or the new breed of new generation people, but I would dare say majority are not like that, right? I mean, the majority of people may not be as brilliant as the examples, but we need to create such more brilliant people,
We
and
are
that takes
definitely
time.
very
Yeah.
blessed to have them in our lives, because all the people who are such gifts, definitely, and we can actually can nurture and grow these gifts by implementing the right kind of learning system, the enabling learning systems, definitely.
Thank you, Farah. Shifting back to Oliver, right? There's a comment by an attendee. Thanks to you bringing up about AI in kindergarten. To start at kindergarten schools, the parents play a part tremendously. We've been talking about educators, right? But the parents here. So whoever would like to comment, in addition to Oliver, please come in. It is the home that shapes one as well. So the member of the audience saying that, okay, when it comes to AI for education for kids, preschoolers. So what is the role of the parents? How do you incentivize parents to groom their own children? It's a different perspective, but same topic. How do you get parents involved? How do you motivate them? How you incentivize them, other than the educators in school? So shifting the responsibility a little bit from the educators to the parents. What are your comments on this, Oliver?
Sure. Nasri, can I just show 2 slides from a presentation I made?
Please, let me
for the
stop share.
audience? Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. I thought this is useful. Since I talk so much, I might as well share with you.
Talk good
since I
stuff.
talk so much, I might as well
You
to-
guys, good stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So I did a presentation. I'm just going to show you 2 slides. So this is one slide that talk about AI and the kids, and I mentioned about the
that's right.
kindergartens, right? So
Correct.
so these are news clippings that I took, which shows that the China is actually introducing this AI textbook for preschoolers, and the audience talk about parents' role, and here you have, right, a Chinese parent guiding the child, and you look at this child, she's probably no more than 8 or 10 years old, right, in terms of robotics and AI, and this mentions about AI majors being approved in 35 universities. But having said all this, right, I totally agree with the number of sentiments that's mentioned in the audience. So with that, let me show you the next slide. Oops. Let me show you my next slide. Now, this has caught the attention of UNICEF, right? So there is a publication on policy guidelines on AI for children.
There's a policy guideline guidance.
Yes, this has been published just this year, right? Policy guideline by UNICEF on what and how much you should push to the kids, because it's happening, right? Everyone is competing and trying to push for it, right? So we need to make sure that every kid is taken care of in their own interests, and we don't overdo it, right? So you can, of course, Google this and download this document and read. Very interesting document. Back to the question from the audience about the parents playing a role. The answer is absolutely yes, right? However, having said that, I guess the different society in the different countries are at a different state, and we need to recognize that too, right? If we can give our children the opportunity to explore their potential and build upon what they know and don't know, that would be great. But on the other hand, we've got to be mindful, right? What UNICEF is putting forward, right? We've got to be very careful what we push the kid, because at the end of the day, you want the kid to grow up happy, to have a memorable childhood, and not end up, sitting in front of the tablet or the machine all the time, just learning and learning. And that may not be the right thing. Of course, we can make learning fun, but the physical activity, getting out there under the sun and receiving vitamin D, is also a very important and healthy part of our life. So I have no answer to the parents on how and what they should do. It is probably a balance that each parent will have to take. But perhaps read up the UNICEF guidelines, and maybe you can get some light somewhere that tells you what you can do. Back to you and the panelists.
Well said. Dr. Justine, Arijit, comments on this parents thing?
Well, I believe that, more than kids, we need to educate parents.
Kids need to educate parents. Okay.
When we talk about, honestly speaking, when we talk about implementing AI in schools, probably we need to teach the parents what is AI, how they can get benefit out of it, and how their kids can get benefit out of it. When we talk about robotics education in schools, I will not take example of maybe some European country, because that's really, really far more advanced than us in India. While traveling around 41 odd countries in my life, I have seen education systems in Finland, education systems in, of course, in France or in Spain. And when I compare back to our own education system, we talk about robotics training in India. These are really, really basics. And people charge a skyrocket high price. And because parents don't understand what their kids are getting, they're just paying the fees with the understanding that their kids will learn robotics, their kids will learn probably artificial intelligence. But when we actually look deep into this, I think we need to create a situation where parents can get one day, very easy, one day workshop. They will learn and understand what are these new technologies are. And probably we can start a crash course for all these situations. Now, if we ask ourselves, I just saw a comment that, do parents have time? To be very honest, if you can't manage time, then I'm so sorry about this statement. Then probably you're not entitled to comment about your child's progress, because you're not capable enough to understand how to manage your time. People say, a lot of people say that they don't have time, they are super busy. Well, I know my good friend Nazri, and of course, a couple of others like Farah and others. I'm not saying that they are out of the world, but they can manage time. So can I. So if we can manage our own time with all those busy schedules that we have and give time to the young kids, a parent can do that as well. So let's not put a statement that whether parents have time or not. Let's put a statement that, can they build their future generation, which they didn't get? If that's the answer, if that's the question, that, okay, fine, I didn't get X amount of this because I didn't had probably some 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different situation. Maybe I didn't have internet or so much of knowledge. I personally feel a parent should come back to communities like us and learn, understand what's coming up. More than kids, again, I'm repeating my statement, more than kids, it's time for parents to learn and understand what's coming up, because they sometimes, if we look back to the kindergartens, I'll go with Oliver. There is a conventional way of giving training to the kids. And as a parent, sometimes they need to follow it. But if they have the knowledge, how to educate a kid, how to give knowledge and ask them to ask questions, probably they can have a parent-teacher meeting, and I'm sure schools will understand it and implement it.
Thank you very much, Arijit. In view of time, we have about 6 to 8 minutes left, and I would really love it if all the panelists and speakers are able to wrap up their thoughts based on the questions and the that have been brought up by the members of the audience here. So one is a issue of affordability. The other one will be on current gaps, and in the third one will be on your thoughts on AI as a form of digital wisdom. So perhaps to summarize all your key points that have been, valuably captured, through this session, we would like everyone to give about maybe 2 minutes each on what this education in AI means to you, and in terms of digital wisdom. Okay, so this is one of the questions. Then I thought the issue of affordability of adopting AI is important. Affordability and accessibility, right? This is very much mentioned by Arijit amongst others. And then third one is current gaps, and what will be the solutions for it. I know it's quite a lot to talk under 2 to 3 minutes, but maybe you can give your thoughts on these 3 key bullet points as a form of key takeaway. Starting with who would like to go first on this?
I could do it. I could do
Okay,
a quick
go ahead.
short one.
Yes.
Quick short one, and I pass it back. So just to answer one of the questions that came out, Singapore has got a AI for Everyone program, which is a 3-hour program which used to be delivered live in a workshop. Now it's gone online. It's free for anyone. So I encourage you to go to the AI Singapore website and look at this program. AI for Everyone, all right, readily available.
Is it free?
It's free. Yeah.
Okay.
You can go to the website and register, and you can do it online. Now, I think we are in a generation where technology has widened the gap very much, right, between the adults, the parents, and the kids. There's a little phrase that has been going around, and I know someone has written a book on analog parents, digital kids, right? So that is actually very challenging. In fact, if we think between parents and kids, there's a gap. Think of the grandparents and kids. That's even worse, right? I did a couple of intergeneration program between grandparents and kids.
Wow.
It's quite amazing because the grandparents went through an era where they play board games, right? Moving little pieces on a board, on a table. Now, most of the young kids today don't understand what's a board game, and everything is fast moving, interactive on the smartphone, right? And trying to bridge the two together is a big challenge. And technology, the progress of technology has created that. So don't have an answer, right? But I think we need to be mindful of the analog parent and the digital kid, something we should think further. And perhaps that could be a separate panel on this discussion.
Absolutely.
Back to you.
Okay, but how about Farah? Any thoughts on this?
Yes. I think AI can help to enhance the learning outcomes for the learners, and also to relieve the workload stress from the educators, in the sense that AI can help to process a lot of the information and data checking for, you have to check the working papers and all that. So, and then also the educators' schedules are mostly, sometimes mostly routine, and they're overloaded with work. So AI can help to relieve this stress. And then also, in terms of what's the third question? Sorry, to address the current gaps and solutions. So we can actually recognize that every child is a genius, and AI can actually enhance the learning capabilities of every child.
Very good. Arijit?
Yeah, so what I feel, AI can actually give a platform to enhance the skill set, whatever skill set a kid has got. It can probably detect and understand what is the interest level of a kid, what they want to do in their own life. Maybe it's too early to take a decision, but if you look at a child's education, probably after the age of 9, they are quite capable enough to understand what they want to be in their own life. So probably with such kind of tools, we can give an enhancement of their own skill set. And in today's world and next generation, in future generation, if you ask me, it's not going to be the certification that they have got, rather the kind of skill set that they have got. And that's where AI can play a very big role, and it can play a significant implementation in any part of the world, how to enhance the kids' learning methods and how to give them an option to enhance the existing skill set that they have. We shouldn't encourage someone who really want to go for physics and ask them, okay, fine, you choose a line of arts, because your traditional education doesn't allow you to give such kind of opportunity. I think that will help kids to take a better decision. Same thing goes to the parents as well. So I propose to create a tool which can probably give two different methodology. One tool which can enhance parents' creative aspect, which can enable them to understand their kids better rather than understanding from the results, from the school results or university results, and probably creating a tool which can enable a kid to better understand what they want to do in their life and enhancing their own skill set. That's my two takeaways.
Very good. Very child and learner centric in this very important message that you just conveyed. Yeah, Arijit. And a reminder to everyone that Farah was saying that not every child is a genius in his own right or her own right? But the trick is how do you unleash that talent. Final note from Dr. Justin. Any comments on these three aspects: digital wisdom, AI, affordability, accessibility of AI, and current gaps and solutions that you think will be necessary to expedite and promulgate AI more into the education system?
Yeah, I would believe that. I just want to address really quickly the current gaps and solutions, and that, here in the U.S., we always look at Singapore as a use case. I say in terms of AI, the government in Singapore has funded, the AI education for the country, right? And now Oliver's actually allowed me to shared that I can now add the AI in kindergarten to my artillery. So because the whole thing in the US, they're saying, Justin, what are other people doing? Right? And talk about Singapore. Well, now I'm gonna talk about China and introducing AI in kindergarten, right? And whenever I introduce that, it's gonna be an easy sell for the parents here in the US. That's going to be the easy sell, right? They're introducing AI to kindergartners. So how far ahead are they going to be once your child is competing with those people in China who are coming over here to U.S. institutions? That's the sell, right? But in terms of the current gaps and solutions, I think that we're going to have to add the democratization of AI and these emerging technologies into the UN agenda. The United Nations has to come together and specifically add the democratization of technology to their agenda, in my opinion, right? A question came up of how do we provide computers, how do we provide computers to those emerging economies? We have to have these large organizations that claim they do all these amazing things around the world. Okay, Apple, okay, Microsoft, give us some laptops. For the children of the countries you're saying you're doing so much for, right? That's how we could probably have some potential solutions, right? That's it. Thanks.
Wow, everyone, thank you so much for your sharing of today's session. Participants, you have still a few questions going on, but I hope the panelists can stay behind for a couple of minutes to answer that in text. But my special thanks to Dr. Justin, Oliver, Arijit, Farah for extending their time for 90 minutes or so towards sharing their thoughts, views, and perspectives. And you can feel their passion about education, as even though they are all entrepreneurs or technopreneurs, they still have a heart for the kids, in terms of learning, and for the educators in terms of teaching. So what's a stark reminder is that while it's good to know what other countries are doing, it's good to know the challenges that the rural side of countries are doing or lacking. it's also important to know how at the end of the day, every educator needs to know his or her student personally. So this is where AI plays a part in creating that personal touch, personalized teaching, and personalized learning or learning roadmap on part of these students. So we have to embrace AI. So can you imagine if secondary school kids, kindergarten are already learning AI in some parts of the world? What more if we are educators in schools, right? We could be primary, secondary teachers, we could be university lecturers, and we are behind the curve when other countries are catching up fast or starting out very, very early. So it's important for us to remain relevant. It's important for us to not making that leapfrog, right? But making that norm, making that basic mark. So thank you so much to the members of the audience who threw at us many very valid questions. Like I said, if the panelists could stay behind for a little bit just to answer a couple of their questions that came in fast and furious, fast and fury, I think that'd be great. Yeah, so on behalf of MyFinB and the Center for AI Innovation, thank you so much for your time, and do stay tuned for our future webinars and programs. Thank you so much. Thanks, panelists and speakers. Bye-bye.